This beautiful and unusual rosette-shaped fungus is called Berkeley's polypore. The scientific name for it, and pardon me if I am executing the pronunciation terribly, is Bondarzewia berkeleyi. And I just love to say Bondarzewia, and I know I put the emphasis on the wrong syllable of a lot of scientific names, because my Greek and Latin is, it just doesn't exist. And so I wanted to show you this edible mushroom, even though this specific specimen is past its prime. So the first thing to note about this mushroom is that it is a butt rot fungus. And so you'll find it growing in these big, as I say, rosettes or clusters at the base of oak trees in particular, but other hardwoods I believe as well. They have a really significant resemblance and shared habit and habitat to a common edible and popular chicken of the woods species that grows in the Eastern U.S. That is called Laetiporus cincinnatus. I've done a couple of videos about them, but suffice it to say, like the long and short, is Berkeley's polypore grows in the same way, forms these sort of leafy and porous undersurface sort of concentric growth zones, fruiting bodies, but Laetiporus cincinnatus is sort of a peachy orange in color, whereas Bondarzewia berkeleyi, I'm just going to start calling it Berkeley's polypore in case I'm just like driving some poor classicist or scientific classification expert mad with my bad pronunciation. But anyway, the coloration of this mushroom sort of varies between like creamy tan to beige cream pale tan to light brown tannish cream. So as with many mushroom descriptions, you have a lot of very similar tones expressing themselves in a sort of like morphological guide or a field guide that is, writing down the different features, may come up with some fairly elaborate solutions to the problem of there are slight differences in the color of these growth zones, but it also varies upon age and condition of the mushroom. So, for instance, this fruiting body, super leathery, would definitely not want to bring it home and eat it. It's been sun-baked. And it also has a pretty unpleasant sort of chemically sour aroma. And I'll talk a little bit more about mushroom smells and identification, because that's like, you're supposed to use all of your senses when identifying mushrooms. I don't bother with taste unless there are a couple of like very specific circumstances. So like there's a couple snotty mushrooms that need to be tasted, a couple of russula mushrooms that some of them are spicy, and it's sort of like a little frivolous because russulas are impossible to identify, but still, like, you can chew it and spit it out and at least be like, oh, it's in this spicy ginormous group of species as opposed to the not spicy. But in this case, in most, I just don't think you have to, you don't have to taste test this. You can use your nose and all your other senses. So this is a much younger fruiting body, but using our touch sense, we can almost immediately tell that it is really not pliable. And, when you're getting this or chicken of the woods, they become quite fibrous, and at that point they take on unpleasant flavors that are similar to that aroma I was describing. So first of all, I have misplaced my mushroom knives, not in the woods, somewhere in my car, but I am rocking the Bojangles biscuit knife of shame here until I am responsible enough or have the time and wherewithal to retrieve my proper mushroom knife. But, as you can see, I'm just sort of like trying to saw through it, and it is really hard. Even snapping it is really hard. And so you just, use that sense, and it will often give you all the information you need about whether or not to bring it home. Another thing that I will note about aroma that I find to be interesting, but also a little bit of a cause for concern, I don't think anyone's specifically like gonna get sick from this, But I was very surprised by it, and it is present in this specimen. So the first Berkeley's polypore that I found this season was a little bit rough and tough, but I was going to bring it home and try to make jerky from it. So Berkeley's polypore, the black staining polypore, which is very similar, except it stains black and its fingers are a little smaller. And also some of the chickens of the woods make really good jerky. And these porous undersurfaces, especially Berkeley's that has, you know, nice big pores, they make a great jerky. So I brought it, I brought it home with me. And when these mushrooms age, when Laetiporus cincinnatus age, even at the point, like, you have to get them at sort of just the right time or they'll develop off flavors. But sometimes you have like a faint chemically aroma of what that flavor is going to be, but they're still good. So I was like, oh, it's a little bit whiffy, but not too bad. I put it in the car, and by the time I got home, 5-minute drive, my whole car was filled with the smell of fresh baked bread and like kind of sort of cakey bread. So if you are familiar with brewing, it was that sort of buttery diacetyl smell, and also like this very pungent and really quite pleasant baked bread aroma. This mushroom is not supposed to smell like that. And so even though if you pick it and it smells like that, I would say that is just a sign that it's become home to a magnificent yeast colony of some kind. And that is also a point at which you want to move on. So that's an unusual thing I've just never encountered before. So I wanted to share it. Again, I'm not super scared that someone's going to hurt themselves, especially because when you are preparing mushrooms like these, mushrooms like chicken of the woods, you want to cook them quite thoroughly. Wild mushrooms, and this is, I'm holding up another specimen. It's younger, but it's still pretty tough. And it is also, you can't see its inhabitants, but you can see the holes where those inhabitants are. So this fruiting body, oh, there they are. So as soon as I approached it, I saw a couple of these awesome little beetles come out and give me the stink eye, because this is where they live. This freaking amazing and very robust structure for them to eat and reside in. I'm just loving the fact that he is cooperating, because I made sure to harvest this really carefully, and I'm gonna put it back really carefully so that everybody, you know, can stick around. I don't want to cut the lease short or claim an easement, anything like that. It's kind of a ridiculous parallel here, but anyway, I think what I'm getting at is that you know, the yeasty smells, the chemically aromas, and also the microorganisms and not so microorganisms that start to eat or live on these mushrooms. There are diverse, and there are a lot of them, and some of them you don't really want to eat, or you may want to say, okay, I'm going to give that to, well, in particular, I am really fond of beetles, and beetles are really fond of mushrooms. And so more and more often, when I come across mature mushrooms that tend to attract beetles, I don't even fiddle with them. I'm going to have a quick sip of water and take a quick break, but I'll be back as soon as I can. All right. Well, the croak in my throat doesn't seem like it wants to let go, so I'm going to go home and conclude my thought about beetles and other things that inhabit mushrooms. So there are a lot of mushrooms besides these glorious Berkeley's polypores that are very popular, especially with beetles, and I'm really into beetles. I don't know anything about them, I just think they're cool. And so, for instance, Amanita jacksonii, it's a very popular, very colorful edible mushroom that grows in the southeastern U.S. It's very good when it's sort of in a small egg shape, but once it pops open, it gets these preposterously big, sort of orangey yellow gills, and if you tap the stem, oftentimes you'll just get this rainstorm of grumpy and dissatisfied beetles who were forming a colony and spreading spores and eating spores and doing all kinds of beetle things. And so anyway, I oftentimes only harvest the mushrooms that are in like the specific condition or age where I know I'm going to want to eat them. Of course, scientific collection and taking nice photographs, that's a, that's an exception, but nonetheless, like this is a great example of a mushroom that is really chonky, interesting, cool to look at, great representative of the species when it's like lumpy and the species when it has leafed out, but it is going to remain here. And it may remain here for several weeks. This mushroom is very tough and robust, especially in dry conditions. So this is a pretty cool beetle neighborhood, at least for now.